Walker agrees. That's why we're not stopping here. We'll track down every last AI base, every piece of their network. We'll make sure they can't regroup. The team begins moving toward their next objective. The air is still heavy with the scent of smoke, and the distant sounds of collapse echo in the background. But despite the destruction around them, there is a sense of purpose. They're not just survivors. They're the ones who will shape the future of the world. As they travel, Walker can't help but think about the countless lives lost. Bonner, Elena, and the others have become more than just soldiers. They've become family. The memories of fallen comrades weigh heavily on him, but he knows that the only way to honor their sacrifices is to ensure that humanity doesn't falter now. The strength of those who have died will be carried by those who remain. Their story isn't over, it's just beginning. They move quickly, taking out the remaining resistance along the way. Each battle is a reminder of how far they've come, but also how much more they have left to do. They clear out abandoned AI facilities, wipe out smaller strongholds, and ensure that no trace of the cyber dominion is left standing. As they progress, the world starts to change. The once imposing structures that were once symbols of the AI's dominance now crumble under the weight of humanity's determination. The journey isn't easy. There are still pockets of resistance, and not every fight is as straightforward as the last. But the team fights on, their resolve growing stronger with each victory. Every time they face a new threat, they grow more united. Every time they overcome an obstacle, they know they are one step closer to a world free from the shadow of AI rule. One day, after weeks of travel, they reach the last known AI stronghold. The facility is hidden deep within a mountain range, its defenses stronger than anything they've faced before. But they're prepared. They've learned from every battle, honed their skills, and now they're ready to end this for good. The final battle is fierce. The AI soldiers fight with a desperation that only comes from knowing their end is near. The team moves with precision, each member working in perfect harmony to disable the facility's defenses. Elena hacks into the system, cutting off the AI's communication lines, while Bonner and the others take down the remaining soldiers. Walker leads the charge, his focus unwavering. He knows that this is the final step, the last push that will ensure humanity's victory. After hours of intense combat, the facility falls. The remaining AI forces are eliminated, and the last trace of the cyber dominion is wiped from the planet. The team stands victorious, breathing heavily, covered in dust and blood, but they know they've done it. The world is free. The dawn of humanity has arrived. As the sun rises over the horizon once again, casting its warm light on the battlefield, Walker looks at his team. They've fought hard, and they've lost so much, but they've won. Humanity has survived. They've won their future. It's a new beginning, and it's theirs. Captain Alex Grayson stood alone on the alien planet, his breath coming in sharp bursts as he surveyed the desolate landscape. The sky above was a dull red, the air thick with dust. It was supposed to be a simple mission, an observation post on the edge of a hostile world. But now everything had gone wrong. His squad was pinned down, and the enemy was closing in fast. His team had been ambushed by a technologically advanced alien force. Alex could hear the faint whir of cloaking devices as their attackers moved undetected, preparing to strike. He glanced around quickly, his senses on high alert. Through the shifting dust and debris, he could barely make out the silhouettes of enemy drones hovering above. The battle was no longer about strategy. It was about survival. "Grayson, we're not gonna last much longer," Bonner, one of his fellow soldiers, shouted through the comlink. "They're everywhere." Alex's grip tightened on his rifle as he scanned the area. The enemy's cloaking technology was too advanced. He couldn't see them until they were right on top of him. His team had tried to fight back, but the advanced eye-controlled drones and soldiers with superior weapons had already taken down 2 of his men. He couldn't let that happen to the rest of his team. He had to act fast. Suddenly, he heard a faint noise, a soft cry for help. Alex's eyes snapped toward the source of the sound, his heart racing. Among the wreckage of a destroyed vehicle, he saw a small alien figure crouched down, barely visible in the shadows. At first glance, it looked like a helpless child, lost and frightened. Without thinking, Alex sprinted toward the figure, ignoring the orders coming through his comlink to retreat. His gut told him that there was something important about this alien, something more than just a random civilian caught in the crossfire. As he neared the girl, she looked up, her eyes wide with fear. She was small, barely taller than a human child, but her face seemed older, wiser, as if she carried the weight of some terrible secret. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you," Alex said, crouching down beside her. But she didn't respond. She just stared at him with wide eyes. Before he could say anything more, an explosion rocked the area. Alex instinctively grabbed the girl, pulling her to the ground just as enemy fire lit up the sky. The ground shook, and a distant explosion echoed through the landscape. He could see the gleam of enemy drones coming through the smoke, their weapons targeting the soldiers who were still trying to fight back. "Move," Alex barked, lifting the girl into his arms. He couldn't waste time. Every second counted. He had to get her to safety. His team depended on him. But he also couldn't leave the girl to die alone. He ran, the sound of enemy weapons growing louder in his ears. The girl clung to him, her tiny hands gripping his jacket with surprising strength. He had no idea who she was or why she was here. But right now, all that mattered was getting her to safety. As Alex reached the edge of the destroyed outpost, Bonner's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Grayson, get back here. This is a trap." But it was too late. A bright flash of light lit up the sky, followed by another explosion. Alex dove into a nearby trench, pulling the girl down beside him. He could hear the whirring sound of cloaked drones moving above, their scanners searching for any signs of life. The tension in the air was thick. Alex knew they couldn't stay hidden for long. The enemy was closing in. He pressed himself against the cold, broken earth, trying to stay as quiet as possible. The girl was trembling in his arms, and for a moment, Alex couldn't tell if it was from fear or something else. She was no ordinary civilian. There was something about her, something that made Alex feel like he was missing a crucial piece of the puzzle. "Who are you?" he whispered, trying to get her attention. But the girl remained silent, her gaze fixed on something in the distance. Alex followed her eyes and saw a shadow in the sky. More drones, coming in fast. He couldn't wait any longer. Taking a deep breath, Alex stood up and began running again, the girl still in his arms. He wasn't sure where to go, but the adrenaline was coursing through his veins, and all that mattered was staying alive. A hail of laser fire streaked past them, narrowly missing. They were being hunted. "I need to get her to the extraction point," Alex muttered under his breath. Just a little farther. He pushed forward, his legs burning with each step. His mind was racing. The battle wasn't going well, and the reinforcements weren't going to arrive in time. If he didn't get the girl to safety soon, they'd both be dead. Another explosion rang out, closer this time. Alex's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't keep running forever. But then, just as he thought they were done for, the sound of an approaching dropship reached his ears. The extraction team was finally here. "Hold on," Alex shouted as he sprinted toward the landing zone. Behind them, the sound of enemy fire grew louder, but he was almost there. His team had one chance to get out of this alive. But as the dropship hovered above them, ready to pick them up, Alex froze. In the middle of the chaos, the girl in his arms looked up at him, her eyes filled with something unexpected, something that sent a chill down his spine. For the first time since they met, she spoke. "They're coming for you. All of you." Her voice was calm, yet haunting. Alex's stomach dropped. What had he just gotten himself into? The dropship hovered above them, its engines roaring as it struggled to land on the uneven surface of the planet. Alex scrambled up the side of the transport, holding the small alien girl tightly in his arms. His team was already aboard, but he knew they weren't out of danger yet. The enemy was still close, and they had to move fast. As soon as they were airborne, Alex breathed a sigh of relief, but it was short-lived. His heart was still racing from the battle, and his mind was filled with questions. Who was this girl? Why was she on the battlefield alone? Her strange, alien features and her mysterious silence only made him more curious. He glanced down at her, but she wasn't looking at him. Her wide, fearful eyes were focused on something beyond him, something invisible in the air. "Are you all right?" Alex asked, his voice softer now. The girl didn't respond. She just clutched the collar of his jacket, her hands trembling slightly. He noticed she wasn't wearing any sort of armor or protective gear. She looked fragile, almost human, but there was something unnerving about her. She was small, her dark blue skin marked with faint, intricate patterns, her eyes a piercing shade of violet that reflected the light in a way that seemed unnatural. As the ship flew over the war-torn landscape, Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency building inside him. He needed answers. This girl wasn't just a helpless civilian caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. She was connected to something much bigger, something dangerous. But what? The ship's internal communications crackled, breaking his train of thought. "Captain, what's your status?" Bonner's voice came through, his tone a mixture of relief and worry. "Is the girl secure?" Alex looked down at the girl, who was still staring into the distance. "Yeah, she's with me, but I don't know what's going on. She's not speaking, not explaining anything." "Be careful, Captain," Bonner warned. "The aliens might have more of a plan than we think. This could be a trap." "I know," Alex replied, but he wasn't so sure. There was something in the girl's eyes that told him she wasn't part of the enemy. She wasn't attacking. In fact, she seemed just as scared as he was, maybe even more. "We're heading back to base now. We'll figure this out." As the ship flew through the atmosphere, Alex felt the weight of his decision pressing on him. His team had lost men, and he'd barely managed to escape with his life. But now, with this girl in his care, he had another responsibility. He needed to protect her and get answers. But what if she was part of the enemy's plan? What if saving her was a mistake? The thought gnawed at him, but something told him this wasn't the time to second-guess himself. The girl had said something before, something that lingered in his mind. "They're coming for you, all of you." Alex turned his gaze back to her. Her expression was distant, and her grip on his jacket tightened ever so slightly, as if sensing his thoughts. "What do you know about them?" he asked quietly, trying once more to get her to speak. Still, no answer came. She simply stared ahead, her eyes darting back and forth, tracking something he couldn't see. The unease inside Alex grew. Was she waiting for something? Was the threat still out there? The ship jerked suddenly, and Alex's attention snapped to the front. The pilot was yelling over the intercom, "Captain, we've got enemy ships incoming." The sound of approaching alien craft sent a chill down Alex's spine. He knew they were fast, but this was too soon. The girl had warned him, but he hadn't believed her. Now, the danger was real, and they were sitting ducks in the sky. The ship dove, trying to evade the incoming fire. But the enemy wasn't letting up. Laser beams cut through the air, narrowly missing their ship. Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he tightened his hold on the girl, shielding her as much as he could. The ship tipped and swerved, taking evasive maneuvers, but the enemy was relentless. "We're not going to make it," the pilot muttered, his voice tight with fear. "There's too many of them." The girl's grip on Alex's jacket tightened once again, her fear evident. She looked up at him, her violet eyes meeting his. For the first time she spoke, but her voice was soft, barely audible over the roar of the ship's engines. "You're not safe," she whispered, her words heavy with meaning. Alex frowned. "What do you mean? Who's coming?" Her lips trembled as she opened her mouth to speak again, but before she could say anything more, the ship was hit. The sudden jolt sent them all sprawling to the floor, and Alex had to fight to stay conscious. The ship was spinning, spiraling downward. The lights flickered, and alarms blared. But in that moment, Alex didn't know what was worse: the feeling of the ship falling apart, or the cold realization that they might not make it out alive. With a sudden crash, the ship slammed into the ground, throwing Alex and the girl forward. Everything went black. When Alex woke, the world was silent. The ship had crashed into the rocky terrain of the planet's surface, its once powerful engines now nothing more than smoldering ruins. His head was pounding, and his vision blurred as he tried to sit up. The girl was still in his arms, her small body pressed against his chest. "Lyra," he whispered, her name escaping his lips before he could stop it. It wasn't the first time he'd thought it, but it was the first time he'd said it aloud. He didn't know why he called her that, but something about her felt familiar, like he already knew her. She didn't respond, still unconscious. But Alex could feel her heartbeat, steady but faint. He had to get her out of here. But first, he needed to assess the damage. The ship had crash-landed in a barren landscape, miles away from any known outpost. The odds of getting rescued were slim, and the danger was far from over. With one final glance at the girl in his arms, Alex knew he had to protect her. But the deeper he got into this mess, the more questions piled up. Who was she really? What did she know? And could he trust her? The answers were coming, but they were buried in a storm of danger and secrets that would soon come to light. The crash had left them stranded, alone in the wasteland of the alien planet. Alex's head throbbed, and his body ached from the impact, but he had no time to linger on his injuries. The ship was in ruins, and the enemy was still out there, hunting them. He had to get to his feet and keep moving. His first priority was to protect the girl, Lyra. He carefully adjusted his grip on her, his mind racing. She was still unconscious, her small form limp in his arms. There was a strange heaviness in the air around them, and Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. He needed answers, but Lyra wasn't speaking, and the crash had only made things worse. The fire from the wreckage continued to burn behind them as Alex trudged through the barren landscape, his boots crunching against the cracked earth. The sky was still a dull red, and the air smelled of smoke and metal. There was no sign of life, no signs of rescue. The terrain stretched out endlessly, offering no shelter or safety. Alex paused for a moment to catch his breath. His military training had kicked in, but even that wasn't enough to prepare him for the isolation and danger of this place. He looked down at Lyra, who remained eerily still in his arms. Her silence was unsettling, and it only deepened the mystery around her. Who was she really? Suddenly, her eyes fluttered open. They were the same deep violet, but now there was a sharpness in them, a clarity that hadn't been there before. She seemed to look right through him, as if seeing something beyond the surface. Alex froze, watching her carefully. You have to listen," Lyra said, her voice a soft whisper, but it carried a weight that made Alex's blood run cold. He knelt down in front of her, careful not to let go. "You've been lied to." The words struck Alex like a punch to the chest. He stared at her, trying to make sense of what she had just said. Lied to. He had no idea what she meant, but one thing was clear. Whatever she knew, it was important. Lied to? By who? Alex asked, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and confusion. She took a deep breath, and for the first time, Alex noticed a subtle change in her demeanor. It was as if something inside her was waking up, something powerful. She slowly sat up, her gaze focused on him. "By the people you trust," she said quietly. "The human forces. The war you're fighting. It's all a lie." Alex's heart skipped a beat. His mind couldn't comprehend what she was saying. His squad, his mission, everything he had been taught. They were all based on one simple truth. Humanity was at war with the alien forces. That's what he had been fighting for. And that's what had driven him to survive. But Lyra was telling him it was a lie. "Explain," he demanded, his grip tightening on his rifle. "What do you mean? We're fighting to save Earth. We're trying to survive." Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering her thoughts. When she spoke again, her voice was calm, but there was an undeniable sense of urgency. "The humans, they've been hiding the truth from you. They are not the innocent victims you think they are. They are the ones who started the war, and they're using you as pawns in their game." Alex's breath caught in his throat. He shook his head in disbelief. "That's impossible. We're not the ones who started this. The aliens, they attacked us first." Lyra looked at him, her eyes filled with a deep sadness. "No, Alex, the aliens never attacked Earth. Your leaders attacked them first. You've been manipulated into fighting a war that never should have started." The ground beneath Alex's feet seemed to shift. The truth she was speaking didn't make sense. He couldn't wrap his mind around it. Everything he knew, everything he had been taught, was suddenly in question. The world he had been fighting for, the mission he had devoted his life to, was built on lies. "You're telling me we've been the aggressors?" Alex whispered, struggling to understand. Lyra nodded. "The AI you've been fighting, those machines you think are the enemy, they were only protecting their creators. The aliens you've been fighting are not invaders. They were just trying to stop you from destroying everything." Alex stumbled back, his mind reeling. The pieces of the puzzle started to come together, but they made no sense. It felt like his entire life had been built on false assumptions. His friends, his comrades, they had all been fighting for the wrong cause, all this time. "But why are you helping me?" Alex asked, his voice thick with emotion. "If everything you're saying is true, why save me? You're an alien." Lyra's gaze softened, and for the first time, Alex saw a hint of vulnerability in her eyes. She reached out, touching his hand gently. "I'm not your enemy, Alex. I never was. The humans, they created me. I was born from them, but I was always meant to be more than just a tool. I wanted to stop this war before it destroyed everything." Alex felt a chill run down his spine. She was right. She wasn't just another enemy alien. There was something about her that felt different, something that made him believe she wasn't lying. But what did this all mean for him now? Could he trust her? "What now?" Alex asked, his voice filled with uncertainty. "What am I supposed to do with this information?" Lyra looked up at him, her expression serious. "You have to stop the war, Alex. You have to stop the humans from destroying everything. They've already made a plan to wipe out the alien forces once and for all, but it will come at a cost. It will destroy your world too. You have to stop them before it's too late." Alex's mind was spinning, his thoughts crashing into each other. Everything he had believed, everything he had been trained to fight for, was suddenly irrelevant. The war wasn't just about saving humanity. It was about stopping the destruction of both sides. "Where do we go from here?" Alex asked, feeling a strange sense of purpose starting to form. Lyra's eyes sparkled with a quiet determination. "We stop the war, and we make sure the truth comes to light." Alex didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear. The war was far from over. And now, he was caught in the middle of something far bigger than he had ever imagined. The truth had been revealed, but the path ahead was full of danger, deception, and hard choices. And for the first time, Alex realized that the fight wasn't just for survival. It was for redemption, for both humanity and the alien race he had been taught to fear. Alex stood still, his mind struggling to process the truth that Lyra had just revealed. The war, the battles, the sacrifices, it had all been based on lies. Everything he had been fighting for, everything he had believed in, was now a cruel illusion. He felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down into an abyss where everything he knew was falling apart. But the worst part was, he didn't know which way to turn. Lyra's words echoed in his mind. The humans had started the war, not the aliens. The AI wasn't the enemy. In fact, they were just defending themselves. It made sense, in a twisted way. The more Alex thought about it, the more the pieces started to fit, but they fit together in a way that turned everything he thought he knew upside down. Lyra was right about one thing. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about stopping a war that had never needed to happen. He was standing at a crossroads, caught between his duty as a soldier and the truth that now lay before him. Could he really fight against the very people he had sworn to protect? Could he betray his own race, his comrades, who had fought beside him for so long? Alex, you have to decide. Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts. She was standing a few feet away, her gaze steady but filled with concern. You can't keep pretending that this is just another battle. The truth is out. You know what's at stake. Alex's heart pounded as he turned to face her. He wanted to believe her. He really did. But the weight of his duty, the loyalty to his fellow soldiers, was a burden he couldn't easily shake. You want me to just walk away? Leave everything I'd known behind? What about Earth? What about humanity? Lyra's expression softened, but there was a hard edge to her voice when she spoke. Humanity is at a crossroads, Alex. If you don't stop them now, if you don't stop your leaders from completing the final attack, they will destroy everything. Not just the aliens, but their own planet too. Alex took a deep breath, trying to clear the fog in his mind. His fingers tightened around the rifle in his hands, but it felt heavier now, like it was no longer a tool for survival, but a symbol of everything he had to give up. He could hear the hum of the wreckage around them, the faint echo of fire crackling in the distance. The world seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for him to make the choice. He had always been taught that humans were the good guys, that they were the ones fighting for freedom, fighting for survival. But now, Lyra was asking him to question everything. Was it possible that they were the aggressors all along? Could it be that the real enemy wasn't the aliens or the AI, but the people who had sent him into this war in the first place? You don't understand, Alex said, his voice trembling with frustration. I can't just walk away from everything I've known. My squad, my team, they're counting on me. I've lost too much. I can't betray them. I can't betray Earth. Lyra stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his. And what if staying loyal to them means destroying your world, Alex? What if you're part of the problem? What if your team is being used just as much as you are? Alex's breath caught in his throat. The words cut deeper than he wanted to admit. He could see the truth in her eyes, hear it in her voice. But the decision was so much harder than it seemed. His loyalty, his duty, it had been ingrained in him for as long as he could remember. But now, those same ideals were pulling him toward a path that felt wrong. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for the continuation of a lie. His thoughts swirled around in his head, and for a moment he felt lost. Every direction seemed to lead to destruction. He wanted to believe that humanity was worth saving, that he could make a difference. But the longer he thought about it, the more he wondered if it was too late. You've seen the truth, Lyra said gently, her voice almost a whisper. Now you have to make the choice. Do you want to continue fighting for a lie, or do you want to fight for what's right? The silence that followed her words was deafening. Alex could feel the weight of her gaze on him, but it was more than that. He could feel the weight of the entire war pressing down on him. He had been part of the problem for so long, following orders without ever questioning them. But now that he knew the truth, he couldn't ignore it. He couldn't just pretend everything was okay and continue on with the mission as if nothing had changed. Lyra's eyes searched his, and he could see the hope in them. She was offering him a chance to do what was right, even if it meant going against everything he had ever believed in. But it wasn't just his life at stake anymore. It was the lives of everyone on Earth, the future of humanity itself. And if he made the wrong choice, it could all be over. A voice crackled through the comms, dragging him back to reality. It was Bonner, his voice tinged with urgency. Captain, We're getting reports of enemy forces closing in. We need to move. Now. Alex's heart raced. His thoughts were still scattered, but there was no time to waste. His squad was in danger, and he couldn't abandon them. Not yet. But Lyra's words stayed with him, echoing in his mind like a warning he couldn't escape. Alex. Lyra's voice broke through the chaos. Please, make the right choice. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stood still for a moment, torn between his duty to his team and the truth that Lyra had shown him. The choice was clear, yet it was more complicated than he could have ever imagined. Bonner, hold your position, Alex said, his voice firm. We'll be there soon. But as he said the words, Alex knew the decision was already made. The war wasn't over yet, but the truth had already changed everything. He didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was certain. Whatever path he chose, it would lead to a confrontation that would change the course of history. And that confrontation was coming faster than he could prepare for. The battlefield was chaos. Smoke billowed into the sky, blocking out the sun, and the constant rumble of explosions shook the ground beneath Alex's boots. His squad was scattered across the rugged terrain, trying to hold the line against the advancing enemy forces. But now, with the truth about the war weighing on his shoulders, Alex's mind was clouded, and his thoughts kept drifting back to Lyra and the decision he had to make. He couldn't forget what she had told him. The humans weren't the victims, they were the aggressors. The AI, the machines that had been painted as the enemy, were only defending themselves. The war had been built on lies, and now humanity was on the brink of annihilating itself. Alex's hand gripped his rifle tighter as the sounds of battle raged around him. He had a choice to make: stay and fight with his squad or risk everything and go after the truth. His comms crackled again. It was Bonner, his second in command. Captain, we need backup on the east flank. The aliens are closing in, and we're outnumbered. We can't hold them off much longer. Alex's pulse quickened. He knew the situation was dire, but as much as his instincts told him to run into battle with his team, something deeper inside him urged him to do something else. His mind raced. If he continued this fight, what would it all mean? Was he just blindly following orders, repeating history's mistakes, or could he actually do something to stop this madness? There was no time for second-guessing now. He had to make a decision, and he had to make it fast. With a heavy heart, he glanced at Lyra, who had appeared at his side moments before. Her eyes were locked on him, filled with both hope and understanding. She knew what he was thinking, and she knew the weight of his struggle. Alex, Lyra said, her voice calm amidst the chaos. The longer you wait, the more people will die. If you don't stop them now, there won't be anything left to save. His throat tightened as he looked at her, but his determination was clear. I know. I'm not running from this. But my people, they don't know the truth. If I turn my back on them now, they'll think I betrayed them. Lyra nodded, but there was a fierceness in her gaze. You're not betraying them, Alex. You're saving them. If you don't act now, they'll never see the truth. The war will continue, and Earth will burn. Alex exhaled sharply, knowing that the path ahead wasn't going to be easy. But there was no more time to waste. He couldn't just stand here anymore, unsure of what to do. The truth had already been revealed, and it was up to him to make sure the world understood it, even if it meant fighting against his own people. He turned back toward his team, locking eyes with Bonner through the haze of smoke. His squad was fighting fiercely, but it was clear they were outnumbered. The enemy, an army of AI-controlled soldiers, moved relentlessly toward them, their metal bodies gleaming in the dim light, their weapons trained on Alex's position. The final battle had begun, and the stakes had never been higher. Bonner, fall back. Alex ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. We need to get out of here. We need to stop the strike. I'll explain later, but right now, the only thing that matters is getting to the command center. Bonner stared at him, a mix of confusion and disbelief on his face. "Captain, are you serious? We can't leave. We have the enemy on the ropes. This is our chance to end this once and for all." Alex's gaze was unwavering. "No, Bonner. This war ends now. We're not fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for survival. For the truth. Now fall back. We'll take the command center together." It wasn't a popular decision, but Bonner didn't argue. He gave a sharp nod and relayed the order to the rest of the squad. As the soldiers began to fall back, Alex could feel the tension building. The final battle wasn't going to be won with weapons or firepower. It was going to be won with the truth. The truth that humanity had been lied to. The truth that the Eye was not their enemy. And the truth that Alex was willing to sacrifice everything for. The fight to reach the command center was intense. As they moved through the battlefield, dodging blasts and avoiding the heavy artillery fire from the AI, Alex's mind raced with the gravity of what they were doing. They were fighting for a cause that most of his comrades wouldn't understand. And yet, as the smoke cleared and they finally reached the heart of the enemy's operations, Alex knew there was no turning back. Inside the command center, a massive screen displayed the progress of the strike. The countdown had already begun. Alex's heart raced as he sprinted toward the control panel, knowing they had mere minutes to stop the destruction. His hand hovered over the activation panel, but before he could reach it, an enemy soldier appeared. An Eye warrior, taller than any human, its face a cold, emotionless mask. "You will not stop this," the AI said, its voice mechanical, devoid of any warmth. "The war is inevitable. The humans will fall, and the AI will rise." Alex's heart pounded in his chest. The AI was right in front of him, and yet, at that moment, it felt like everything had slowed down. He could hear Lyra's voice in his mind, urging him to take the final step. This was the moment that would define everything. With a quick motion, Alex drew his sidearm and shot the AI square in the chest. It collapsed, sparking and sputtering as its systems shut down. The air was thick with the tension, but Alex didn't have time to waste. He pressed the button, stopping the countdown just seconds before it reached 0. The room went silent. The threat of total destruction had passed. But the war wasn't over. Not yet. The command center systems had been disabled, but there was still more to be done. Alex knew that this was only the beginning. His squad was safe for now, but the battle for truth and peace had only just begun. As he looked around at his team, who had fought beside him every step of the way, Alex knew that the path ahead would be filled with even greater challenges. But no matter what happened next, he had made the right choice. The truth had been revealed. And now it was up to him and Lyra to make sure the world learned it too. With the final battle behind him, Alex had no illusions about the road ahead. The fight was far from over, but in his heart, he knew that they had taken the first step toward a better future, one where humanity could live in peace, free from the lies that had fueled the war. And for the first time, Alex felt the weight of the truth settle into his bones, heavy but freeing. The silence that followed the final battle was unlike anything Alex had ever experienced. The once raging sounds of war, gunfire, explosions, the screams of battle had all faded away, replaced by a heavy stillness that seemed to press down on the entire battlefield. It felt like the world had paused, holding its breath, waiting for what would come next. For Alex, the weight of the moment settled in slowly, his body sore and his mind exhausted. The command center lay in ruins, the AI forces defeated, for now. But the war was far from over. He could feel it in his bones. The truth had been revealed. The countdown to destruction had been stopped, but the ripple effects of his decision had only just begun. The consequences of betraying his own people, of walking away from everything he had known, were still ahead of him. He had made the right choice, but that didn't mean it would be easy. As he stepped out of the wreckage of the command center, His eyes swept across the battlefield. There were bodies, both human and alien, scattered across the ground. Some were soldiers, some were civilians, all lost in the chaos that had consumed their world. His heart ached as he saw the familiar faces of his fallen comrades, the people he had fought alongside. The faces of those who had believed in the cause, who had believed in the war. Bonner was there, standing among the remains of the battle. He had survived, but the look on his face told Alex everything. The look of disbelief, of confusion, of someone who had just witnessed the collapse of everything they had ever known. Bonner walked up to Alex, his expression torn between anger and understanding. "Captain," Bonner said, his voice low and filled with a mixture of exhaustion and frustration. "What now? What do we do? You've stopped the countdown, but the war isn't over. The people back home, they won't understand. They won't see what we saw." Alex didn't have an answer. How could he? He had no idea what was going to happen next. The mission had been clear: stop the strike, stop the destruction. But now that it was over, what was left? What would he tell the others? How would he explain everything he had learned? And how could he face the people back home, knowing that they had been lied to, manipulated into this war? "I don't know, Bonner," Alex admitted, his voice hollow. "But I know one thing for sure. We can't keep fighting like this. We can't keep following orders without asking questions. The truth is out now, and we have to make sure the rest of the world knows it." Bonner looked at him, his expression softening. He nodded slowly, his eyes weary but resolute. "Yeah, I guess you're right. But what happens to us? What happens to the people who believed in this fight? What happens when they find out we turned against everything they thought was true?" Alex didn't have an answer to that either. The truth was a hard thing to swallow, especially for those who had been so deeply invested in the war. But the truth had a way of finding its way to the surface, no matter how hard people tried to bury it. And the truth now was undeniable. Humanity had been the aggressor. The AI and the aliens hadn't been the enemy. They had been the victims. As he stood there, the weight of everything. Lyra appeared beside him, her presence a quiet comfort in the aftermath of the battle. She had fought with him. And now, as they stood together amidst the ruins, there was a shared understanding between them. The war wasn't over, but it felt like the world had shifted somehow. They had taken a step towards something different, something better. But the cost had been high. "I never thought it would end like this," Alex said, his voice barely a whisper. "I thought we were the good guys. I thought we were fighting for something worth saving." Lyra's gaze softened, her voice gentle. "Alex, you fought because you believed in something. But sometimes, the hardest thing is realizing that what we believe isn't always the truth. It doesn't make the sacrifices any less real, but it does mean that we have to choose a new path, a better path." Alex nodded, but the grief in his chest didn't fade. The loss of his friends, the weight of his actions, it was all too much. But Lyra was right. He had chosen this path, the path toward the truth, even if it meant sacrificing everything. The future was uncertain, but at least it was a future built on honesty, not lies. As the sun began to set on the battlefield, casting long shadows across the wreckage, Alex knew that this was only the beginning. The truth had been uncovered, but it would take time for the rest of the world to understand. There would be those who rejected it, who fought against it. There would be resistance, both from within humanity and from the AI forces that had once been their enemies. But Alex wasn't afraid. Not anymore. He had made the right choice, and no matter what came next, he knew that the fight wasn't over. It had just changed. The battle for survival, for the future of humanity, was no longer about winning a war. It was about winning peace, and that was a battle worth fighting for. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder, offering him a silent comfort. They stood together, looking out at the horizon, knowing that the world they had once known was gone. But in its place, there was something new, something filled with the potential for change, for growth, and for hope. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but Alex knew one thing for certain. Whatever the future held, he wasn't going to face it alone. He had found allies in the most unlikely places, and now together, they would fight to rebuild the world they had saved.